Hi, this is Professor Cummings, and this is Module 2, Lecture 1. So at this point, you should have completed Module 1, and you probably saw the first video of Module 2, which is just the introduction video, and now you're actually getting into the lecture. And in this first lecture, I'm going to start off with a case study. So the case study for Module 2, which is Module 2 is basically going over the whole culture, training, implementation aspect of Lean Six Sigma. And the example I want to look at is how Lean Six Sigma was implemented at GE Electric, General Electric Transportation. That's one of the bigger adopters of Lean Six Sigma. They are one of the big companies where it's easiest to find any kind of case study on it. Now, a little bit about GE Transportation. GE Transportation, it used to be called GE Rail. It's a division of General Electric as a whole. So it's just one part of General Electric. And what they manufacture is transportation, railroad, marine, mining, drilling, and other energy generation industries. So there's actually a whole line of trains that you can see made up by General Electric, part of this whole division. The actual headquarters is in Chicago, Illinois, and they have a couple of manufacturing plants, which is in Fort Worth, Texas, and Grove City, Pennsylvania. So they have a couple of manufacturing plants and, the headquarters up in the Midwest in Chicago, Illinois, and they have an annual revenue of $5.9 billion per year. So it's a big company with a big history of manufacturing, a lot of organization that has to take place, a lot of process improvement and continuous improvement needs to take place throughout this entire company. So they're a really good candidate to look at as far as implementation of any type of continuous improvement, in this case Lean Six Sigma. Now, one thing that makes them a little unique is, well, you'll see it in this next one here, is they already did practice Lean and Six Sigma, but they practiced them as separate. They didn't practice them as one actual tool, one actual philosophy for continuous improvement. So there were some sections of GE, General Electric, that actually had Lean. They also implied Six Sigma, which was a slightly off the side kind of a thing, or actually was a thing that they actually emphasized more on was the Six Sigma portion of it. So they were very well versed in Six Sigma, and they actually treated Lean as sort of a separate thing. But both of them were continuous improvement, and both of them were a part of their culture at this point. So what happened was, back in 2005, because it was becoming such a much more global adoption of Lean Six Sigma, the leadership at General Electric decided to start to adopt Lean Six Sigma as a continuous improvement strategy on its own. So in 2005, so they were doing both of these before, but never as one synergistic move. Now, the way they did this, because it's such a large company, and because they do have some experience, or did have some experience in both of these separately, which could both actually be a major transformation of any organization, was they utilized a top-down approach. So they started with the upper management, the leadership of the company, the top executives, and started educating them in Lean Six Sigma. They used that to be a way of generating excitement throughout the company and getting the actual climate of the company to change. From there, they actually used the black belts and master black belts, people who actually had Lean or Six Sigma black belts, and used them as change agents throughout the company. So different departments, different divisions, different organizations within this organization had a black belt that was pretty much in charge of helping implement and move this whole thing forward. They created cross-functional Lean events, when a cross-functional team was basically people from all over the company with different disciplines, to try and understand Lean Six Sigma, and as well as to generate excitement. So again, they're trying to change the overarching culture. So just stop right here on this slide. They were basically going from the top down, throughout the organization, creating different types of events throughout the company, and different types of conferences and sit down meetings throughout the company to try and normalize the concept of Lean Six Sigma. And the only the hurdle that they had was that Lean and Six Sigma were always introduced separately. Now they're trying to generate excitement for having them together as one unified front. Now, the entire workforce went through a formal education session. So it actually took courses and learned formally how to do Lean Six Sigma, learn what the rules were, what the philosophies were, and learn, like you're doing now, how it was actually implemented. And from there, they started to, they took advantage of the fact that they've had past Six Sigma successes, as well as past Lean successes. So they made the transition easily by building on prior successes. And again, they started this formal training process was with the company executives. So one of the things you'll see throughout most case studies, if not all of these case studies, is that they always start with the upper portion of the company. The benefit of that is that it actually gets taken more seriously. Changes actually work better when they come from the top down. When they come from the bottom up, or when somebody in the middle makes the change, it tends to be a lot tougher, because if the upper portions of management don't always support these changes, then they don't always take hold. Other people don't take them seriously, and priorities change, and sometimes overall directions change. Now, the way they trained the rest of the organization was partially through pilot projects. So, where the overall company was getting trained, what they did within small organizations, as well as to build up a little bit of confidence in the concept, was to have smaller projects, smaller pilot projects that people would work on a much more local level, much more granular level. So to kind of give a summary to how GE implemented. First, they were already familiar with Six Sigma and Lean, but they did this separately. Lean and Six Sigma were not considered one entity with them. So they had a problem solving and a efficiency movement within the company. It was an education from the entire workforce, and it was a top-down sort of application. So they started with the upper executives, or in this case, on this generic organizational chart, the manager, and they worked all the way down through the organization to generate excitement and get people much more familiar with the project. The black belts and the master black belts were change agents. They more or less helped organize and help facilitate any Lean Six Sigma projects that were going to be taking place throughout the company. They actually proved the concept with other projects, by using pilot projects more on a local level with cross-functional teams. So that was basically the way this whole idea was implemented through GE. That's kind of a higher, very high level view of it. But what I want you to get from that was that it is a top-down process. Everyone in the company has to be formally trained, so everyone is on the same page. Confidence was built by making sure that there were pilot programs, and in a case of like a GE or any other company that actually has Lean or Six Sigma already implemented, was they built off of other successes. So they treated this as an extension of something that everybody already knew and trusted. So now, as far as the questions, some of the questions I want you to think about from this video. What's the benefit of introducing Lean Six Sigma from the executives to the workforce? Just think about that in other organizations, not just with GE, but if you had to put that in your own words, what would be some of the benefit of that? What would have happened without the leadership support? How do you think this would have gone down, potentially have gone down, if upper management or several people in upper management really just said, do what you do. I don't see the importance of this, but if you can actually make it work, fine. So if they didn't give their overarching support, how do you think this would have happened? What was the role of the black belts and the master black belts? What did they actually contribute to the process? Again, you can read the case study, it's on Blackboard, and just think through what this did, what those guys actually did, what was their importance, why did they need them in the first place, in other words. Now, this last question is, how would Lean Six Sigma be implemented in an environment with no past in Six Sigma? Or you could change it to Six Sigma or Lean. So instead of a company that has the benefit of having a track record in Lean Six Sigma, what if you had to implement it in your organization where it was just a concept that no one had proven yet? You know, how would you have to change, and how would you go about implementing this? Again, this is Professor Cummings. This is Lecture 1 in Module 2. Go ahead and re-listen to this, or and plan on looking at other lectures, and eventually get to your assessment. But thanks for watching, and look forward to you in my next lecture.